Hey yo guys, I'm just here for a short little video. Just want to give my thoughts here. I'm sure most of you should know by now the untimely passing of Andrew Test Martin. Um, he passed away, I believe, yesterday or so in his condo in Florida. The police haven't officially released, his name, but, a lot of people, a lot of the wrestlers know it's him, and one of the things they found in Mr. Martin's wallet was a Blockbuster card that had Kelly's real name on it, and, Test, for those of you that don't know, Test and Kelly had, a pretty strong relationship, even to the point where, Test basically said that Kelly saved his life, and whatnot. So, it was a pretty decent relationship. This is just, something that catches you off guard. Tess passed away at the age of 33. He was supposed to turn 34 this Tuesday. So, that's just, one of the things of the business that sucks. It's just untimely. I think for the people, wrestling fans, there was a string of a couple years where we were just used to, people passing away like this, but, ever since Benoit, most of the deaths in the business really were people who, were dying more so on natural causes or, because they were getting older and, whatnot like that. But, Tess is just, I guess, maybe, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's, I guess maybe people are smartening up and how to care their bodies, but, and Test unfortunately passed away. We don't know the cause yet, but we should within a couple of days. Really, Test had a pretty interesting career if you think about it. He was, scouted to an extent by Bret Hart, who was trying to, help give, some, Canadian talent, a chance to, shine on the big show. And from that point on, he was one of, the magical camps, from one of the early WWF developmental territories with, the likes of Edge, Christian, Steve Corino was in one of those camps, Sean Stasiak was in one of those camps, Tiger Ali was in that camp with him as well. All those guys that I mentioned were in the same camp as Tess, so it was one of the special camps going on. I believe Ken Shamrock was in there as well. I think Ken Shamrock was in that camp as well, but I'm not sure about 100% about Shamrock, but I know everyone else that was in there that I mentioned was in that camp. From that point on, really he got, he was brought in, a part of a bodyguard. Really, he got to be in the corporation, being The Rock's bodyguard, so he got a pretty good rub as well with The Rock and, the whole corporation. But, once that angle started to die down, they as babyface, and he got probably the biggest push of his career at this point. The biggest push of his career, I should actually say, ever, as he was in the those GTV segments where it was him and Stephanie McMahon, having this relationship, and they pushed it pretty far up to the point where Shane McMahon was jealous, and they had a loser, the loser, if Test lost, he couldn't go out with Stephanie and whatnot. If Shane lost, that he'd have to let go of that. At SummerSlam '99, Test won, and then the next night on Raw they did one of those wedding angles. But this to me was one of the more successful wedding angles that get screwed up. Even to the point, on that same show, Test worked Triple H. When Triple H is one of the probably the best heel in the business at that point. And then they did the whole thing where Triple H revealed that he'd married Stephanie on the drive-through wedding after getting drugged, whatnot. And from that point, it was unfortunate that Test didn't really get a stronger push. But as that feud more spindled into Triple H versus Vince McMahon, but whatever. And then from that point on, really they turned Test heel. He teamed with Albert and pretty successful tag team, TNA. What was the name of them? TNA. Managed by Trish Stratus. When she was just breaking into the business. She was signed because she was a former fitness model, but that's more so because she was an actual friend of pro wrestling. And then he was turned babyface again. Pretty quickly. He won the European Championship from William Regal. Eventually lost it to Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania 17. And then, really from in 2001 again he was once again after that he was turned heel, as a part of the whole alliance angle. He eventually was winning the hardcore title that flip-flopped, what have you. He won the immunity battle royal, which I guess shows that the company still had some plans for him. That's where they could throw him in. He was in the King of the Ring tournament in 2002, losing to actual winner Brock Lesnar. So I mean, they put him in some pretty good standards, and he had a pretty good match with Lesnar as well. So I mean, for a big man worker, Test is one of these stronger people that you could look into. And then really after from that point on, he was put into the Un-Americans. His career was basically a flip-flop of heel babyface at a pretty quick rate, which is unfortunate. He's put into the Un-Americans with the likes of Lance Storm, Christian, and William Regal. He had a pretty important match with, the guy he got to work at SummerSlam 2002, Undertaker. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. I mean, he worked some of the top guys in this company, so don't say that, Test really never did anything in his career. I mean, he worked some pretty important people. And then you go, basically, he was turned back babyface, managed by Stacy Keibler, who were the fans of his testicles, that's what they called his fans, whatnot. And then basically, he was getting over pretty well as a face, but then, Scott Steiner was brought in and he was just demoted so far down to mid-card it wasn't even funny after a string of horrible matches with Triple H. And they basically did this feud where they turned Test into a heel again, and trying to fight for that, making that Stacy should be his slave, whatnot. And then that feud fizzled out. Fortunately, around this point, Test broke his neck. Had to get the fusion surgery and would be out for at least a year. And then the WWE did something that was absolutely one of the most shocking moves they've ever done, is the fact they fired Test. They released him from his contract while he had a broken neck, which, sent shockwaves throughout the company. Definitely would leave a bad taste in the wrestler's mouth knowing that, hey, if I break my neck, they could fire me. John Laurinaitis said that, when you're in better shape, we'll give you another look, which, that's just not right. I mean, Test did so much for this company. He worked a hell of a lot with this, that company. And, for them to fire him like that, uncalled for, if you don't mind me saying. I think everyone should agree that that's uncalled. You don't fire someone with a broken neck. And really, ever since then, they haven't. They keep all those guys under contract, even if they may consider releasing them down the line. They just keep them because that's not right, and they have, medical bills to pay for, and plus they have a family to support. So that's why they don't do that. Test eventually did get back into the ring, and from that point on, he was really negative about the WWE, not only for the releasing, but, the drug policy going around, how the wrestlers were dying and whatnot. He was very vocal during the Eddie Guerrero passing. So basically then in 2005, Test got into the ring working for Rikishi's new NWE New Wrestling Evolution promotion in Italy. Which has actually turned out to be, one of the hotter promotions going around today. Especially, it's great for Italy. But anyways, he teamed with Scott Steiner a lot down there. So, that's where he went, basically. He worked a lot of the European tours up until this point. Up around that point. And, in late 2006, early 2007, Test, for a guy that was very vocal about the company, was brought back to be part of the newly formed ECW, where they put on Sci-Fi. He was a pretty strong heel, what have you. He mainly worked Bobby Lashley on that show. Worked Rob Van Dam and Sabu, but, his biggest stuff of that show was, when he worked Bobby Lashley for the ECW championship there. And then he was, released in what was believed a mutual release due to the fact that, Test failed a drug test, and I guess the company came to a mutual agreement, like, that's my body, what have you, and the company's like, well, we can't have you this big, and you can't be failing drug tests, so they released him. And then he went to TNA and, worked there without a contract, even worked the pay-per-view in the barbed wire steel cage match, the Blood Massacre match. It was a terrible match, but anyways, beside the point. That was the last year we're ever going to see of Test in the mainstream light. As he was released quickly after that, but you have to, he was released because of his body. This was during the time when the whole Congress was actually starting to get interested in looking into professional wrestling, and Test had this massive steroid body, and TNA thought his body's not good enough, and plus his attitude isn't gelling well with TNA wrestling, so they released him. or they just didn't sign him to a contract. This demoted Test, working more European tours, as well as, he worked some stuff in Japan. Just recently he worked a show promoted by Leon Vader White. In Japan, he worked, one of the people he worked was Lance Hoyt. I can't remember the name of the Japanese opponent he worked, but he still worked that person, so he worked down there. He was apparently supposed to, just get started doing a couple more shows in the European markets as well. I mean, the thing that's, interesting about Test is Test was one of the guys that, would say that actually ever since, like, December '07 that he was going to retire. He didn't want to be, another statistic. But, unfortunately he is, and that's just, I guess that's just the nature of the business. And I guess, like I said, it's shocking that we go into the whole thing where, the business, this is the business. I mean, we hadn't had a death like for someone at that age in a very long time, at least, since the Benoit death. So, I mean, this is just shocking. My condolences go to the Martin family. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm out. Peace.